Today's video focus is going to be on circular saw blades. You're like, I don't want to sell saw blades. Well, if you need to, think about a different product line, because saw blades are consumable. They're hard goods, but you could easily replace this concept that I'm going to talk about for jewelry, for clothing, for other hard goods like ceramics or other tools. And this is going to be the first in a series like this. The series won't run continuously, but as I see the opportunity as I'm sorting, find an item, especially one that's not featured often by other sellers, I'm going to make a video on that topic, and we can expand your skills. We can send you in new directions so that, like me, if you're an opportunist and you're out and you see this, it won't seem so strange or foreign. You can pick it up, you can look at it, you can give it a quick eval, and if the price is right, buy it and resell it. Reselling the humble saw blade, in this case a circular saw blade. Put it up online, learn the ropes, and then start sourcing. So as I clean up my shop, I'm finding a whole bunch of things in quantity. This particular video will be about saw blades. So the sourcing in this case is from my workshop. But this is a common category of item that you'll find often in thrift stores, garage sales, online. Or you bought several for a project and you didn't use them all. And if you don't think you're going to be into saw blades, it's okay, because the thoughts and advice, they're transferable. I could be talking about books, I could be talking about jewelry, it doesn't matter. So in the case of saw blades, we'll take a look at sorting them, analyzing them, taking a look at the information that's on the packets. New old stock is a great way to get things, because the information you need to do the listing is right there in front of you. We'll talk about listing them. In this case, it'll be up on eBay. These fall into the category of commonly used repetitive consumables. A carpenter, he's going to use them daily. He's going to wear them out. He's going to need more. And if the industry of building houses is booming, the demand will go up. If the industry is declining, the demand will go down. So demand, of course, plays a factor. But even though they're heavy, especially in stacks, they don't take up a lot of space. So their value in comparison to the amount of room they take up in your eBay inventory is pretty good. And that's one of the factors you want to look at. Of course, comps for actual price and value do vary. In the case of saw blades, American-made new old stock is often in demand. Brands like Freud, Craftsman, and then of course your classics like Ryobi and DeWalt. Those are the ones that the tool manufacturers want you to buy the product line. So if I buy a DeWalt saw, do I buy a DeWalt saw blade? That kind of thing. But they're accessories, and they do wear out, so they need to be replaced. And if you're like me, I like to go find something that's tried and true. If I've used it for years, and I have a bunch of them, and I liked them, and when they wear out, the first thing I try to do is find another one just like it. And often, the manufacturers have moved on. Retail stores aren't stocking that brand or that model anymore, or they've changed the model. I have that problem with ordering pants. You change what country they're made in, it's like you change the cut and design. So I can order the exact same shoe or a pair of pants, and it'll come in and it'll be different than the ones I've been wearing. Well, saw blades are similar. They go on to different material, different tips. They make changes over time, which is a good thing if you're a reseller. Bad thing if you're trying to actually buy new product. So people will go onto eBay and they'll type in the one they've got in front of them that's wore out, and they want another one. And if you've got a stash of new old stock like the one they just wore out, you've got something that's worth selling. How much depends on the size of the blade, the quantity you're offering, the shipping. All of those things play. But I've got some video clips over the last few weeks relating to sourcing, selling, packing, and we're going to look at those things in regard to saw blades. So the focus of this video is saw blades, circular saw blades specifically, ranging from about the 5-inch small ones to the common 7 1/4 to the 10-inch ones for table saws. So that's what we're looking at. Now this may be a category you've never considered, but you should, because they're readily available, they're easy to ship, they have a little value, and they're fun. All right, we're talking about the kind of blades that DIY types use around the house when they're building, carpenters use on job sites, or they get mounted into a table saw for shop work. All right, now recently I've been sorting out through my collection of saw blades. Why? Because we moved down from a big shop in Seebeck. I had lots of space to a much smaller operation here at the lake. And as I've aged, I'm not using circular saw blades nearly as much as I used to. So I'm not wearing them out. So my surplus is available to sell. So what we've done is we pulled a bunch of them from those bins that came down from Seebeck, and I laid them out on the white tables, and I started to group them. Those that were in great shape, new, still in the package. Those that were in the package as new old stock, but the packaging was a little rougher. And those that either had been used or the packaging was just not something I'd want to put up on eBay. They went into some lots by size, and they went to a local auction. They've since sold, and I made some money, or recouped some money in this case, because at some point I outlaid cash to acquire these, and then I simply didn't use them. And that's often where new resellers start out. They're told, look around your house, find items you no longer need, maybe a hobby you grew tired of, some clothes you outgrew, books you've already read. Sell the things you have around because your investment is zero. In the case of my saw blades, same way. You know, I bought these years ago. And because they're older models, there's some advantages to that on the resale market. They were almost all made in the USA or made in Japan. They still fit all the common modern saws. And if you're a person like me, you like repetitive brands. If I buy a DeWalt tool, maybe I'll buy some DeWalt saw blades. Or if I find a particular blade I like, when it wears out, I want another one like the one I just had because it performed well. So if I look at the blade in my hand, the old one I wore out, and I check and Home Depot's not stocking those, the manufacturer may not even exist anymore. But I want that because I like that. Well, I'm going to go on to eBay. And if I go on to eBay, I'm going to find resellers like me, maybe like you, who have taken the time to put those items up. Yeah, the packaging may be a little rough. The blades may be 10 years old. But especially new old stock, they tend to retain their value, or at least retain enough value to make this worthwhile. So our focus on saw blades, and you can replace the word saw blade with just about any other category because I'm talking about processes. I'm not talking about individual items. Because as you downsize, as you look around, eBay is a great place to sell off things you no longer want or need. Surplus. That's why it was created. So we laid all these out on the table and we separated them into groups. Sometimes it was by brand, sometimes it was by size, sometimes it was by type. And I've begun photographing, listing, making drafts, and selling. First few have shipped. I'm out at the white tables. This is the group that I set aside when I was sorting to make up lots to go to auction. The lots I made up have already gone and sold, and they were a mix of new and used blades, packaging that was really rough, some that had obviously been used, that type of thing. But what I set aside were mostly new old stock blades that hadn't been used or even opened. And if you look, you can see that some of the packaging It's obviously old. This is an old Vermont American 10-inch blade for like a table saw, like a big cabinet maker saw. But this is the group that I figured I would check the value of. Doesn't mean I'm going to list them on eBay, but I thought they were worth holding since I had so many blades when I was making up the lots to go to auction. And now some of these, like these two Credos, these are a little smaller than normal, which makes them a little harder to come by. One's a 5.5, one's a 6.5. If they don't have enough value, I will put them together and sell them as a pair. Here's a pack of the abrasive cutoff saws. I don't know how many are in it yet, but we'll find out. Freud 10-inch cross rip saw. That's a good blade. Here's one I didn't even recognize. Calcraft. And again, this is a 6.5. You can see it here. These are your very common size, 7.25. That's the most common size for electric hand saws, skill saws, whatever you want to call them. And you can see I've got 3 different brands here. So first I'll check their value as solos, and if they're not particularly good, I'll either double up these DeWalt's or put all 3 of the Diablos and DeWalt's together. Credos. Here's a 7.25 Credo. If they have enough value, maybe I'll do it that way. There's a 6-inch Porter cable, 6.5-inch Vermont, and a cluster of 7.25 Craftsman's. Now that's a natural bundle. Those 3 with their yellowed packaging, you know, it just screams vintage. But we'll put those together and sell them as a group. And like I say, other than that yellowed packaging, the great thing about selling items like this is that all you have to do is wrap them in a piece of cardboard. They're so thin and they're steel, so they're pretty much indestructible. The packaging is more susceptible to damage than the actual item. But yeah, I'll take these down to the workbench today, photograph them in lots and groups, and then I'll give you a snapshot of what some of the values turned out to be once I get to that point in the process. I sell a lot of tools. I was a tool guy for many, many, many years. And even though I don't build anymore, big projects are not in the scope of my retirement, I've got some knowledge, and we're going to talk about that. Because as you begin to resell, you can't always stick to the same thing month in and month out. Expand your horizon. And as I clean up and downsize my workshop, because we moved from Seebeck in a much, much larger shop down to a place here at the lake, and I'm in a much smaller space, it's obvious even to me that I've got too much of the same type of thing. And if I'm not using much of it anymore, I might as well flip it back into cash and use it for something else, the cash. So as we've gone through them, it became apparent that in that group I was sorting was a chance, an opportunity to show you about a category you may not be involved in. But circular saw blades are one of those things that you're going to find when you're outsourcing. If you're at a garage sale, a rummage sale, a church sale, you may find some new old stock or new stock that was purchased for a project and not used, or purchased in quantity and the spares were set aside, or from a guy like me who just had way too many because he thought he needed them. But the point is that they're hard goods, and if they're still in their package, the information you need is right there on the pack. You can check their value. They're easy shippers, and we'll show you some shipping. They're easy listers because you can take the information right off the product. So as I get started on comping these saw blades, the first one I'm looking at is this vintage Craftsman. It's the same number I have. They're trying to get $29 for a single blade. I happen to have 3 of these that were originally retailed as a special buy 3-pack. So I'll use this one as the starting comp, and I'll do a sell now, or what we used to call a sell similar, and that'll bring up a draft using the basic information. And that's all I'm after right now, is to create a draft, because the next thing I'll do once I've got all these in draft form is I will go through and I'll type up a specific description that is pretty much general to every one of these blades with a storage location. And then I will upload the photos into the individual drafts. And then over the next couple of days, I'll finish them a few at a time. Good morning. I'm outside waiting for some folks to come do a pickup. And I thought, well, I'd wait. I'd mention that I uploaded all the video clips yesterday for the saw blade video. This is Brian, by the way. And as I was putting together the clips and making the cuts, I wanted to mention that I ended up with about 10 lots. I grouped them initially just from experience, by brand or by size, and then I started making the drafts. Opened the first one, which was a Craftsman. It turns out there were 5 Craftsmen in that stack. 3 of them were identical blades that originally were sold as a 3-pack, a special 3-pack. The other 2 had different part numbers, so I made them a group. So there was a group of 2 and a group of 3. And I went through the rest of the stack and did the same thing. I doubled up the Credos, I doubled up the DeWalts, and as I made the drafts, I began checking comps. I started initially by making a generic draft for saw blade. So when you see the clip where it shows them all lined up in the draft bank, if you look closely, you'll see that all the drafts start out identical. And then as I complete the draft and upload the photos, I start changing those details to what specifically that draft will become. And it just saves me a little time to do that. So in this next section, we're going to take a look at the specific drafts I made. Because once I knew what I wanted to do with them, it doesn't always work out. For instance, there was a group of the blades for cutting concrete and metal. It was a little pack. They're kind of a fiber blade. Well, I decided to keep those in case I need to cut some retaining wall block for the ends of the row. So I said, well, those don't have to go in this batch because I might have a use for them myself. And one of the best things about sorting out your old stuff is that you sometimes remind yourself that you own something you can still use. And so I simply held them back. Haven't opened the pack yet because I haven't done the cutting. I will use up any partial blades I have that still have serviceable life in them. And then if I use those up, I'll reach for that new pack and I'll open it up and continue. So we're looking at some specific listings that I made for drafts. And I'll do some zooming. I'll try to show you filling out the item specifics, changing the title. But I like to start with something pretty much generic that has my location, the fact that it's a saw blade, my terms about, that say things like new old stock, still in the pack, look at the photos, and then I modify that for each individual listing. One listing might have more wear to the package, so I'll make sure I highlight that. One might have yellowed plastic, like some of those Craftsmans, so I make sure I mention that. But when I make the first draft for that batch, I try to fill out all the blocks that will be applicable to almost every listing. And then I add to it and modify it as I go along. One of the great things about YouTube, though, is that you can stop it, you can back it up, you can pause it. If you're watching on a device that is zoomable, you can then zoom in and see the details. If I haven't zoomed in, you may be able to. But of course, the bigger the screen you watch these videos on, once it gets into the details of putting data in blocks, the bigger the screen you're using, the easier it will be for you to follow along. Just like if you're a podcast, I'm trying to describe the process as I go, so that if you're only listening, you still get something out of the video. And then if there's some point that is really hits home with you, you can always re-watch it. And I've got another video I put up earlier about how you can now save YouTube videos to call them up later. So if that's of interest to you, check out our playlist. So now we're in the draft section on my laptop. And you can see that I took a few minutes and I populated all those drafts with the photos of the unique blades or pairs of blades. Here's that Porter cable. Here's the Credo Kudo. What else have we got? This looks like the Fire Tooth. All right. Come down a little further. Let's open this one and say resume. This one is two Credo small blades. You'll notice that they're different sizes, but the same guy doing this work might want to do this work. And I haven't researched these yet. I don't know whether each of these would have enough value to put up its own listing or whether they're going to go up in a pair. And that's two different scenarios. But I uploaded the photos at the same time because those are both Credo blades. And the only real difference is how many teeth, what diameter, and what they might cut. So say when I'm making this listing, I find out that these are each worth $25 a piece, and I go, wow, I should split those out. Well, all I have to do is finish the draft for one of them, and then sell similar off of that. And the additional information, like the fact that they're Credo, would be there when I made that second draft. And then I would simply delete the photos from the first draft that aren't going to be used. But when I was making that photo, like say I used the first draft that we're looking at right now to do this one, and then I sell similar or make a copy of this one to make the other. I simply tell it the second time I want the photos. And then I simply, when I'm doing this one, I delete those photos. When I'm doing this one, I delete these photos. And again, I've done the work quicker than if I was starting from scratch making two initial listings. I don't know when the last time it was I ever went into eBay and started a draft from nothing, from scratch. And it has an option like that. You can say, tell us what you want to list. And it will begin, you'll be picking categories, you'll be picking features, you'll be filling out your item specifics. But I don't. I always start my work as a sell similar from something else. Someone else's listing, one of my other listings. But the truth is if you're going to use other people's listings, you want to always glance at this category, because when you say sell similar, it will populate from their listing. And if they chose a bad category, your draft, your copy, will also have that same bad category. So then this is my store category. This is where I happen to put these type of tools. And if you got something that might fall into more than one category, you can hit the edit button, it'll open it up, and you have the option at no charge to put a second category in here. Let me show you how that works. Say I thought these blades were commercial instead of just homeowner use. Well, here's the item categories, but if you put an eBay second category in, they'll charge you for that service. But down here, these are the store categories in my store, and I control this. So my first category choice is tools. If I think it should cross into a second category, here you go. If I thought it was a collectible saw blade, if I thought it was something to do with marine use, maybe a book on saw blades, or if I came down here and I said it's a brush cutting blade, it's for string trimmers, I could use that one. I could come down here and say I'm looking for actual commercial. I'm trying to do this through the phone screen, so it's a little more awkward for me. Here we go. And if I clicked commercial and I came up and said done, I would now have two categories here. And if somebody wanted to search for commercial saw blades instead of just tools and hardware, it might get you an extra response. It might not. Whether to bother doing it is really a question of your time. But if you believe your buyers go into your store and then look around and shop by category into your store, because this is what happens. If we come into the store, and this is my Hank store, that's the old marina in CBET. And you can see that if they want to just scroll down by the page, they'll come across all sorts of random items, books, games, saw blades. But they can search by category. And here are those same categories you just saw for me to pick from. And if I say show more, there's tools and hardware. So if I click on this, then the software only shows them the items I've put into tools and hardware, and any errors that we've picked up along the way. But if they want to look for commercial things, then they pick commercial. And if I haven't tagged these as commercial items, they simply won't appear while they're looking around inside your store. So that's how that plays out. All right, let's go back to the draft section again for a couple more comments. We will back out of this and it won't save those categories. But if you'll notice, I actually made more drafts than it turns out I needed. So in that case, it's not costing you anything. So you just come back through and tag the extras. And you say, delete the draft. And it tells you you're going to delete them. So this is how you get rid of any draft you decide not to use. Now, if I split any of these that currently have 2, I could carry the information. These happen to be a pair of mismatched blades, and say this one had value, and my photos are still on my phone. So instead of simply making this one redundant and using it one draft for this and one draft for this, I could wipe these pages, remove all trace in this draft, and then I could come back out here, pick another draft, which is why I've left a couple here, and tag photos onto this. And this would become the draft for that other blade. But anyway, that's how on a laptop it's more convenient to make drafts. Now, some people don't use drafts at all. And some people only use their phone. Because remember, that's where the photos are. So what they like to do is do everything on their phone. They take the pictures. That way the pictures are right on the same device. And then they list from their phone. I find that more cumbersome, especially with my large fat fingers, and I find it slower, and I certainly can't type as fast on my phone with one finger or 2 fingers. But that's how I make drafts. Sometimes when Rose is taking the pictures and the pictures are in her phone, I'll make drafts on my laptop, and then because all the devices share this information, she'll actually attach her photos to my draft. Or she'll create a draft of her own and I'll attach photos to her draft. Or she'll make the whole listing draft on her phone and then I'll step in and finish it. Because there are some features on the phone that just aren't there. They're available on the laptop only. So I can do more things with a draft listing. Other people never do draft. They go straight from, I took my photos, I'm creating my listing, I'm going live. I like to have a draft bank so that on a photo day, I take a bunch of photos. On a drafting day, I make a bunch of drafts and add the photos. And then, like today, I'll probably list these 3. Tomorrow, I might list these 3. And that way, I space out my listing. And when I run out of drafts, I take a bunch more photos. And it's a wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Now, another thing I'll sometimes do, you can see how small these photos are. Even if I enlarge it, and I can enlarge it even more so I can read the specifics. But what I will sometimes do, I've got my phone sitting here right next to my laptop as I type. I'll do the expanding the photo on my phone so that I can type looking at my phone's details. That way it's just faster. Having 2 devices, you can do the same thing with my iPad. I could have my iPad open here, and that way I can pull the details, like this is a 10-inch f4020 Firetooth for Mon America, and I can type looking at my phone's enlarged photos. But of course right now I'm using my phone to film, so I can't show you that step. But anything you can do in the process, think about kind of standardizing your process with variations, and if you get used to doing that over and over again, you will increase the speed at which you can list. And the more you list, the more you sell. All right, drafting some more of the saw blade ads. These two, as I did my sort, different brands. The one on the left is a Calcraft made in Japan. The one on the right is a vintage Vermont American made in the USA. But they're both 6.5-inch blades. And because I didn't have a lot, I think this was the only Calcraft and may have only been the only Vermont in this group. I decided to pair them up. Now, they cut plywood paneling and other woods. But as I worked my way through the listing, you can see some of what I was talking about. There's a close-up showing the details. And for these listings, it's great because everything you need is right here. It's a Chrome King. It's a 6.5-inch. You go a little further, it tells you what it's going to cut. Gives you a UPC on this newer one. Lists some other materials right here, other features. Back shows information about their blades. Now, interestingly enough, you can see right here it says Eagle. Eagle is a hardware that used to exist here in the greater Seattle area. It was bought out by Lowe's, at least it was in our area. They had 17 or 18 stores. I liked Eagle because it was one of the last hardwares that you could go in and you could buy like nails by the pound and loose items out of bins. And then, of course, when the big box stores came along, they only sell you prepackaged items. And if you want 2, but the package has 6, you end up buying 6. They could control inventory using SKU systems, where the old hardware is with the loose bins, and you filled little brown bags or little plastic bags with your parts. Much harder to keep control of stock. But this is an example of a mismatched pair, and I'll put them up as a lot of 2, put all the information that's relevant in here. I basically used my same stock listing that I have been using, and we'll put these up and see. You're getting 2 pieces of new old stock, what they cut, their size, mention both brands, and a little detail about where they're made, any other data I pulled off the screen. Now in this situation, it's a little different. Both blades are Credo. They basically cut the same thing if you look at the detail shots. But one is a 6.5-inch. You can see the details here. And one is a 5.5-inch. So 2 slightly different saw sizes, though you can put the 5.5-inch blade on the same saw that can take the 6.5-inch blade. So I decided to pair these up. Again, vintage packaging. All right, next example. Because this is also a 10-inch blade, this one actually is in an open pack, I brought over the item description from the Vermont America 10-inch blade because more of the details will match. So the first thing I did was adjust the photos, crop them, lighten them. And because this one is an open pack, we have a choice. We could either show the entire blade as the lead photo, or we took a picture of it in the package. I think this one presents a little better. Most of the details you want are right here anyway, so we're going to go with that. But we cropped them all. We showed some details like the condition of the teeth, the information about the blade itself. This one tells us it's a 62 triple chip with a 5/8 arbor. And what I do sometimes is I just write that information right here on a piece of scrap paper. It used to be the way the template was arranged. You still had your title line available to type in after you enlarged the photo. But now the way they got it laid out, see how enlarging the photo to read the details blocks the title line? It was one of those changes they made, and I don't think they actually asked anybody who used the template which they preferred. So now I end up using more scrap paper or having my phone open so that I can do the enlargement on my phone. So as we look at this, categories didn't change, brand changed, 60 tooth, carbide rather than flame tempered, 10-inch diameter. There we go. I typed in crosscut and rip, but it didn't remove what was there previously. And that's another little frustrating thing about eBay. Some of them, when you want to enter data, it opens a drop-down block. You can choose from it. Others, drop-down block, right? Two pieces of information. This one uses a drop-down block. This one, you just back over it and retype. So why they can't seem to understand that if your item specifics have 5 different formats, why not enter data the same way? Yeah, it's like having an option to enter some data, and when you open it, you can't type in what you want. You can only pick from the choices they've made from you, and the choice you want isn't even there. It's gonna make it to my frustrating 12 things about eBay video, which I've been working on. So anyway, I brought down the title. I say that it's made in the USA. It's got a premium laser cut body. I changed this slightly from the other one. The other one had some oxidation, so I want to make sure to mention that. On this one, I say package shows where. Original paper inserts are there. All right, so over here, you can see in this photo, it had some paper inserts. The packaging is definitely worn around the edges. So I try to disclose anything like that it should be apparent in the photos. The more you can state the obvious, the easier you can defend against item not as described claims. This one, when I ran the comps, let me find it here. When I ran the comps, I found out that this model blade in newer packaging is selling for about $40. That's a sold. That's a good comparison. And they're charging $8.60 to ship it. So on ours, I said, here's that annoying plug for help keep your price competitive and let us keep getting you less money as time passes. All right, so I charged $9.79, so I increased my shipping a little bit, but I put my price at $21.79 for this essentially new old stock blade. There's my promoted listings, and there it is. It says it's now live. So if I decide I thought of something else I wanted to add at the last minute, I can click on view listing and go right back in. I can make another one similar, and that's why I say if you're listing sequentially rather from a draft bank, this is what you can do. You could reopen this right here and upload your next one, and then reopen it and upload your next one. And that's as good a way to do it. It might even be faster for you. If you want to create a similar, if you want to create a new listing, and see if we said create new listing, it would take you to this screen I was talking about. You literally have to start with no information at all. And hopefully your search might retain one. But this is so basic, I can't recommend anybody use it. Instead, use this create similar listing. And that way, information, your standard item description, your shipping policies, the category, it's all in the new draft as you open it, or in the new template as you open it. So personally, I think this is a better way to go. Now, Craftsman's an interesting old brand. It was around, of course, when I was a kid. My dad liked Craftsman tools, so as a teenager and then a young man, I bought Craftsman tools. They were in just about every larger city, often in the anchor stores at the mall. We had one in the town we used to live in until it closed down, as most of the Sears stores did. Craftsman's a Sears brand if you don't know. But they had a great guarantee for their tools. If it was sold by Craftsman, you could pretty much bet it was guaranteed. The brand isn't completely dead, though some of it has shifted to overseas markets as far as where it's being produced. But old USA-made Craftsman items are still sought after, especially if you're talking about things like sockets and wrenches and hand tools. And if you break one of your set, you're going to want a Craftsman to replace it, which is why the market's still pretty good online. The brand's now being carried in some of the other big box stores. And the last time I had a ratchet that was damaged and I went to replace it, they had moved from online customer service to sending me to one of the big box stores that carried their inventory. And the salesman just simply looked at what I had, walked over, grabbed another one from their hook off their shelf, and handed it to me and said, "There you go." And out I walked, getting my tool replaced. And that was that way for, like I say, just about my whole life until I started closing the stores. As far as pricing my 3-pack, it'll fall somewhere between what this guy is trying to get. There were no sold comps, especially for a 3-pack. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at what they're going for, and then I'll compare them to even more modern Craftsman's. So here you go. Here's a 3-pack. They're getting $16.50 free delivery. All right, so I'll probably put my 3-pack up at $14.79 plus shipping. And hopefully it'll be an older guy like me who has always bought Craftsman. So here's the unpopulated draft that I made by selling similar. And because I also have a 2-pack of a slightly different blade from Craftsman of the same era, I'll just tag that, come over here to create a copy, tell it I want 1 copy. There are no photos, so it doesn't matter if I transfer them. But if you wanted the text but not the photos, you can split your choice here. And then I simply say, make me another one. And a second one will pop up identical to the first. And what I'll do is I'll attach the photos of the 2-pack in here, the 3-pack in here, and once I've typed the text, I'll just copy and paste it over from the first one. So I'll list these at the same time on the same day, and as soon as I finish this one, its information can be cut and paste and put into the second one to make listing that even faster. This is something I like on the laptop. From what I gather, you can't do this type of redundant make copies. If I had 10 items, I could have had it make 10 of these drafts. And if I populate the first one before I make the copy, then all the information I put in would copy over with it as well. All right, the next blade is a Credo Cuda, 7 1/4 inch with that model number. And a similar blade popped right up here. Looks like they're putting this one up at auction with a buy it now of $11.96. And the first one that is listed as brand new, ultra thin carbide. You can see they're getting asking $19.95 plus some shipping. Boy, that shipping seems high. That must be calculated. Let's click on solds. All right, it looks like one sold at $2.99 plus $9 shipping. Now that's more along the lines of where I'd expect it, and why I will probably pair this blade up with another one of the same size. I'll look for a Credo. If I don't have a Credo, I'll pick another one. But $3 is not the price point I really want to list these at, because it's an awful lot of work to make a couple of bucks. Yeah, this reseller trying to get $19.95 plus $15 shipping. Their name is Swanky, and I guess if you're willing to pay that kind of money, you must be swanky. Okay, now you notice these are featured as made in the USA, which is what led me to a conversation about that topic on a different video clip. But the nice thing about selling new old stock parts, tools, blades like this is that all the information you need, part number, size, brand, what they're made out of, it's all right here on the packaging. And when I take the photographs, I sort them first, and I pair them up if I'm going to sell 2, and I don't have 2 identicals. But what I do is I photograph each of the blades separately, front, back, details. Then I go to the next one, front, back, details. And then I do a photo showing both blades. And if I decide to go that route, because they don't have the value to sell separately, I've already taken the photo. I don't have to get them back out. If I decide to sell them individually, then I just delete that photo. But I do the work so that I can then comp them and decide what's going to happen to them while I've got them on the bench taking the pictures. That's just another trick I use to speed this up. It's like making multiple draft copies. They're just ways to speed the process up. Over the years, listing has become a much slower, drawn-out process, especially for one-off items. You'll hear people cursing about the dreaded item specifics getting longer and more detailed. And it's just a trend eBay and the other sites has been on for the last few years. It used to be we took a photo, just a couple of photos, made a nice title, had most of the details right in the title, added anything to the description, like if I have to say the package has shelf wear or the package is rough, put a price on it, pick some shipping, and your listing was done. Now it's become much, much more complicated, convoluted, and takes... Okay, so we've taken this fire tooth, we've cropped the photos, we've brightened them so that people can read the details, we've made our title, and here's an interesting point. This one will fit 2 sizes of arbor. I think what you've got on this saw is a little knockout disc. So the hole is 5/8, but if you want to knock out that silver ring right there, it would get you a larger arbor. Used to see more of that in the old days. We went down through here. Some of it we changed. We made this a 10-inch blade. We added Vermont, America. Package quantity. I don't know the teeth per inch, and I'm not going to count them. Flame hardened was a feature, so we want to make sure that's in there. It's a 10-inch diameter. It cuts more things than the last one I copied from. There's the model number, part number, and here you can see I brought it down. I do need to put the 3/4 notation here because I added that before I brought down the copy. Vintage, new old stock, made in the USA. This one will fit either a table saw or a radial arm saw, type of cutting it does. But the only thing that really changed from other drafts I've showed you is that here's something that I find eBay is now letting you select auto price reduction. So as the listing ages, it'll knock your price down automatically. I'm not such a fan of that kind of a concept. You can end up owing eBay money. But even though this item is new, unused I should say, probably 20 years old in a sealed pack, it's got some deterioration. You can see it right here, little oxidation. And that plays into this next step, which down here I had to call it. I had to say, what's its condition? Well, my choices are not perfect. I wish eBay would solve this. My choices are brand new, unopened, undamaged, original packaging. There's nothing in the middle here except new open box. Excellent new condition with no wear. Item may be missing the packaging, or may be in the original packaging, but not sealed. Item includes original accessories. See description. And that's what you got to rely on. Because this one is not pristine, I had to say open box. But you've immediately got a problem with that, eBay. The package is not open, but it has aged and it has deteriorated slightly. So you, the lister, have to decide which of these two best describes. If you pick new, there's no block for condition. There's no place to enter data. You have to put it in the item description, which is what I've done here. Unused in a sealed pack, but the blade shows oxidation. See photos. All right, and hopefully that won't cause me a problem. What you get sometimes is people, they look at the title, they look at a photo, they're on their phone, they can't see it in great detail, they buy it. Then they have a problem. They contact you. You say, well, didn't you read the description? And they go, no. All right, so who's at fault? Is it the lister? Is it the buyer? And whom will eBay side with if they open a return request or an item not as described. Therein lies a challenge for eBay sellers. All right, let's take a look at this comp one more time now that I've begun actually filling out my draft. You'll notice how they took all the numbers. Tools, parts like this, they tend to be number-heavy listing. Model numbers, part numbers, sizes. You'll notice that they ran this 7 1/4 200 all together. Well, that makes the software on eBay look for a part number or an item number like this. But these are really two different numbers. 7 1/4 is the outer size diameter of the blade. 200 tooth is the count, the number of small teeth it has. Here's a part number down here. 5/8 is the diameter of the small arbor hole in the center. So now if we pop over and we take a look at my draft, you'll see I have the same information in here, but I separated those with the key words. So now mine says 7 1/4 plywood 200 tooth. So I'm not running those numbers together. I make sure that numbers are separated by words. Here I've separated the 5/8 from the part number. And since mine actually was retailed as a 3-pack, I have 2 part numbers. I have the individual part numbers off the blade, and then I have a second part number for the 3-pack. Now, most people looking for those blades today aren't going to care what the part number was for the 3-pack, so I'll put that down in the description because you're character limited here. And you'll notice that here's a couple more things. Vintage, VTG, was abbreviated. NOS stands for New Old Stock. It's one of the ways we describe things that were never used but are in old packaging. I did manage to fit the 3, meaning you're getting 3 Craftsman saw blades. And I'll make sure I add that every place I can as I work my way down the description. For instance, brand, UPC, package quantity, I'll say 3. Blade diameters, you got your 7, 7 3/4 model. There's the model. I may, if I can, so here I have model, here I have manufacturer part number. So I'll put one of the numbers in that block, I'll put another number in that block, and that way if somebody does happen to search for either number, this should return. This is a smaller blade, 7 1/4, so this goes on a circular saw, handheld worm drive or circular saw, like a skill saw. But it's a newer blade in the sense that we're comparing it to the rest of them in the bin. This one is also made by Freud. It's a Diablo. If you look at the details, it shows it's a 7 1/4 60 tooth ultra finish 5/8 arbor. See, it's providing you all the information. But down here is a key feature. This one says it's ideal for wet lumber. So we'll want to put that in our description because it might give somebody pause when they're comparing it to a cheap standard blade they might find in a box store. All right, Diablo's a well-respected brand. It's a Freud product, which brings up the point that if you're typing names of things that you're not used to, watch for the typos, because if you misspell Freud, which I did the first time, nobody will find it in the search. This one also gives, right there's a UPC. It's a much more modern UPC, so it's the first of these blades I'm going to bother putting the UPC in. Now again, character limited in the title, so you have to pick the words that you think someone will search by and put the rest of them down in the item description or in the item specifics. So you'll notice I don't say where this one is made because it's not plainly shown on the package. So I'm not sure if this one is made in the USA. I believe it is, but I'm not sure. So when I don't know, I leave it out. Same bin, same categories. I put both Freud and Diablo in the brand in case they search by it. Here you can see I added the UPC, 60 tooth. This is where another one of those details came off it. Rather than just saying steel or carbon steel, this is where I put the PermaShield non-stick coated. Thought that might be interesting. Same thing here. It used to say plywood, crosscut, and framing on the draft, and I suppose I could leave that. but I wanted to get this ultra finish ideal for wet wood part. Here's your part number for the saw, and again, same annoying feature. This one you simply back up and type over. This one gives you a drop down. I don't know. It's crazy to me. It certainly hurts efficiency. We're calling this one new because it's still in the plastic hang tag. And we've repeated the interesting facts off the blade itself. Ultra finish perma shield, ideal for wet lumber. You can, when you're a buyer on eBay, search by either title or title and description. And that's why I make sure I bring this down, and I put a little more information here if it's warranted that I couldn't fit into the title. So if there were words up there in the title I deleted because I ran out of characters, this is where I would add them back in. All right, let's take a look at comps real quick, because like I say, this appears to be a basic 7 1/4 inch blade. But because it's a Diablo, because it's a Freud, look at the comps for this single blade. In fact, this is the packaging we have. So this gentleman is asking for $18.99. This one wants $20, and they're adding shipping. Now, if we take a look at solds, we come up with one sale. It doesn't actually show the packing. It might if we go into it a little more. See original listing? No, he's just showing a blade. He got $22. It's from a tool and supply place, and he's throwing in the shipping. So he's actually claiming he's going to send this FedEx. Interesting. Must be a big operation to get a special price from FedEx. But here we go. It's basically the same blade. I think my listing is a little better and a little more detailed. These are good comps, and they're really the only comps that are out there for single Diablo blades. And if it sits in our store, we'll discount it, or we'll send an offer if it shows some interest but doesn't sell at the price we've chosen. But I think this is a good comp for this particular quality blade. All right, I just got a phone call. Brandy and my wife will be over at Brandy's house within the hour, so I got an invitation to come over for dinner. And of course, as phone calls tend to, that'll change what I was thinking about doing tonight. I just finished uploading the photos. You can see different photos. The drafts are still nearly identical. They both say 3. This is the one I modified, so I'll do this one first, and then I'll copy the item description over and put it in this one and make the changes that are needed. And then I'll put these two, I'll set these two to go active as soon as I finish them, because I do need to get some listings up to keep that listing machine rolling on eBay for this account. And tomorrow I'll go back to creating the additional drafts for the rest of the saw blades. And before I head for their house for dinner, I will check the auction, see where the prices sit, and put in bids even if they're not down near the last few minutes. Rather than miss out on any items I want, I'll just throw my max bids into the software and walk out the door and find out later whether I won anything. It's a great thing about online auctions. You don't have to actually be there when the auctioneer says sold. All right, so here's my draft open on my laptop, populated for the 3-pack of Craftsman saw blades. And here you can see I uploaded the photos, more photos than were probably needed for an item at this price point. But while I have it on the bench, I can just keep snapping them, and it's pretty efficient. The trick sometimes is to not get too much glare. And in this section of the draft listing, if you've never seen it before on a laptop, you have the option to do things like crop. It pops up the screen and you grab the corner, and you can crop to get something you don't want. And you can also lighten. And I tend to lighten the photos taken with my phone, especially in the shop. And you just use the slide bar till it looks as good as it can be. We're not looking for perfection so much as we're looking for something that a buyer can use to decide if he wants it. Same way here, same way here. You notice how these words are over here? Well, we can actually crop it a bit. And if we come over here like this, we pull it in, There's the number for that 3-pack, by the way, as opposed to the one that's on it. You hit save, and it'll make the photo larger because we've cropped out the space we don't need. All right, there's a look at a single. Look, all that blue space, that's the sacrificial mat on my packing bench, which is where I took these photos. You bring it in over here. It's actually hard to do one-handed. Hit save. It makes it a little bigger. All right, I'm going to finish these. Yeah, watch this. Bam, all of a sudden you can read all the information. That's all we're really looking to do. Lighten it up. Get any distracting items. That piece of tape was actually there because if I had shine on the case from the overhead lights, I would tuck that tape underneath and angle the product. I think I took a picture of that too, showing it. But for now, we just want to crop them and get rid of them. A few years back, you only had to grab one corner and it moved both sides at the same time. But as eBay tends to do, they made a change and now it takes twice as long to crop. Yeah, they're always doing stuff like that. They think they're doing us a favor by making a change, but often it comes with problems of its own. Next section is a custom label SKU. It helps with the inventory. Your buyer can't see what you put in here. So in my case, I say LG, Lake Garage, D Shelf, Saw Blade Bin, and the month I listed it. That helps me keep track of it. So if somebody sends me an offer, I can quickly tell how old the listing is. Because we'd made this from a cell similar and the guy had it in the circular saw blade category, we'll leave that. We'll open up my categories and we'll come down here till we find tools. Here it is, tools, hardware, and workshop. And then we'll work our down through these item specifics. The top item specifics will be mandatory, then there'll be a break and it'll say additional, and all the ones below that are optional. If you have the information to fill in, and because these are in their packages we do, we'll fill some of that in. Some of them will be redundant, which is annoying. It's like how many places can you have part number or model number? If I don't know the answer, I leave it blank. I don't guess. That's one of the reasons I don't let the AI write the descriptions. It puts in information you can't validate as a seller, but you're still responsible for. Okay, as we zip through the item specifics, I'm not going to bother with the UPC on an item that old. They're getting 3. There's 7 to 7 1/4 is the size, cuts plywood, and there's the 2 part numbers. This is the one on the blades. This is the one for a 3-pack. We're calling these new because if you open condition, your choices aren't always what you want. It would be fantastic if eBay would create condition codes that were consistent. For instance, in between new and open, it'd be nice if there was one that for new old stock, meaning it could be 20, 30 years old, but it's never been opened and used. So when you've got to make your choice, make the best choice suitable to what you're selling. I wouldn't call it used, and I wouldn't call it for parts or repair, which exists in a lot of the hardware categories. Okay, and we've gotten down here, but because we said new rather than open box, we're trying to be very specific about telling them it's new old stock, NOS, it's a 3-pack, it's new old stock, unused in vintage packs. So this is where we're using that. We're trying to explain that these are not right off the shelf new items. And then this is pretty much a standard blurb, and I change it as I need to. See photos for branding, package info, style, cut type, which wouldn't be applicable to things other than blades, and condition. You'll receive the blades shown in the condition zone. And then I point out the fact that we have an eBay store with other items, and I repeat my location here, because I've been doing this longer than eBay has had that custom SKU block. All right, there's the price I settled on. They're getting 3 blades. It's a quantity of one item. but the item includes a lot of 3 blades. So that's how you identify that to the software. This is my my shipping policy, and I just started using those a couple of months ago. That's a video all on its own. I'm not real impressed with the shipping policy program. This is where I say promoted listings and the percentage I do, and then watch this go live. You click list it. Because I have a store subscription, I don't get charged per individual listing. All right, to speed this up, I am going to do the next one by copying over. If you were to view the listing and you were to come back in here, you can now see it's live. This is my listing. There's the lead photo. There's all the other photos, shipping details, that type of thing. But if I come down here, this is where all those item specifics appear. I don't know how they appear on a phone because I don't shop on a phone. But now these are the details. So if I copy this, and I then come into my draft page, and I say I want to put up another draft. Here's the other blade. I say resume. And the first thing I do is dump the info from that last one. And then I start changing it. For instance, it's no longer a 3-pack. It's going to be 2 blades. So I work my way through here, making the changes on the items that aren't identical to the last listing. But see how this is so much faster than typing everything by hand? All right, I'm going to put this listing up, check the auction, and then head out to see my daughter, wife, and son-in-law. Okay, here's the lot of 2 blades. It looks like I forgot to take a photo of the 2 blades side by side, so I'll add that in later. I'll take it tomorrow. And you can see one of these has kind of a yellowed blade pack from its age. Much of this, same shelf location. Much of the item specifics are the same. Here, because the blades are different, I put in both pieces of information. They called these chrome edge 7-inch, so that's what went in here. Because again, there were 2 part numbers involved, I put them both up there. Used basically the same listing. Because these are not the same blade, I like to be clear when I do this. This listing is for 2 new old stock blades to include, and then I list the part numbers and things separately. The rest of it is almost identical. The price going up initially will be $14.79. Lot count is for 2. So we'll get that, and we'll put up some promoted, set the shipping, and list it. Now, if there's something, I was just going to say, if there's something it doesn't like, it'll give you a big red banner, and it says fix it. So you just scroll down through here, and often it has to do with the format. Oh, I didn't select a condition, I guess. So now we can try it again. Usually it doesn't like something like the UPC or the ISBN on a book, and it flags it. So there we go. It's listed. And now it's time to get changed, check the auction, and head down to see what's for dinner. Okay, here's the saw blade that we sold. This is the Freud. It's a crosscut rip blade, 10-inch. You'd put it on either a miter saw or table saw with a 5/8-inch arbor. And it's headed out to California. $21.79 is what we achieved plus shipping. And we can take a look at shipping. Now, the easiest way to do a blade, because you're not really going to damage it, would be to put it in a padded flat rate. But you'll notice it's just a little bit too big. All right, so plan B would be to take a piece of cardboard. I'll have to do a little trimming on it, but cut it to size and just basically seal it inside of that. If you wanted it to look a little bit better, you could always slide the cardboard into an eBay poly, and that way it would be rainproof too. But this time of year, being August, I'm not too overly concerned. We'll check the weight once I get it in the cardboard and the distances to California. Here's the saw blade packaged in cardboard. Now, some people like tape roll dispensers. I just hold it, and just before I cut it, I stick a finger underneath the edge here like this, and that way I just tape it down, and it's ready to go for the next pull. I find the tape roll tools a little awkward. I do keep this one handy so that when I need a small piece and I've got one hand holding something already, I can reach over, tear it off that. But let me put this on the scale, and then we'll see what it's going to weigh out at. All right, she comes in over 2, under 3, so she'll ship at the 3-pound rate. It's about 14 inches long by 11 inches across. It's only shipping to California. What I did is I pushed in these corners and dimpled them, and then I just pushed the 2 sides of the, so I'll probably put an extra piece of tape on that just to make sure, and then it'll ship a little bit under what I charged the buyer because he was in California, but that'll go towards the eBay fees and the cost of the tape and such. Sold some before I even got the rest listed. All right, but again, these techniques apply across many categories, and saw blades just happens to be the first one. We're also going to focus on anything else I come across in this downsizing, or if I acquire some new items and they seem to be an item that other resellers aren't paying attention to, you're going to find them here. The next one I think will be challenge coins. So it's a beautiful day here at the lake. I'm going to go ahead and put a stop to this video, and I'm going to set about my day. You should go out and sell something. All right, this is Brian. All right, well, I was playing with the circular saw listings. This one has 11 seconds to go. That's at Totem. It's up to $40, well, $39 plus fees. So I won't be bidding on that. But I'll check the rest of these that I have tagged with hearts before I head out. Now here's an item I had tagged, and this is something you want to do just before bidding. You open up the listing and it's like, why is this still at $1? At an auction where things are averaging a pretty good price, and then you see the note, has a repaired fin. So there'll probably be a close-up showing that fin, and you have to decide whether or not you think it's still a good value. And if so, bid. Books. This is a really old set of Henry Wadsworth Longfellows, 1897. I checked the comp on these, and they seem to have solds up around $100. So I just put in a $20-odd bid because I'm leaving. I won't be around for 53 minutes. I prefer to wait till the last minute or two before the clock gets adjusted for sniping, but I won't be here. The problem with bidding this early is it sends a message to the other bidder, and he's got plenty of time to evaluate it. Where sometimes, see, I already got outbid. All right, here's one for you booksellers. The Eyes of the World. It certainly got some wear. I believe this is a 1914 edition. Yeah, 1914 edition, sitting at $1. So the question is, where are the comps? I looked earlier, and I think they were between 10 and 30. So the question you would have to ask yourself, all right, we're looking at the green editions like this one. That one's, they're asking only $5, $7. Let's check solds. $10 free delivery, $9 free delivery. Here's the $30 one with $5 delivery. Very nice looking copy. And that's probably why it was worth more. But the average price, not worth putting a bid in on that item, even though it's only at $1. Now here's an item. It's an old wooden box. Looks like it's got finger jointed edges. You can see them here. If all 4 sides were in this good a shape, we'd have something, but it looks like somebody's modified it and put in some filler. So the other end of the box isn't nearly as nice. Doesn't mean it doesn't have value, but let's take it doesn't have a bit at all. So since we'll be going to this eventually anyway to do a pickup, we'll throw a bit in. We now have the winning bid. Well, hello, this is Brian, Cabin Fever. It's after 6. It's Spider. And we have splashed down.